All right, so in this particular video, I'm going to talk quickly about the Japanese beetle. And of course, based on the title, I know I'm going to have a few people who are not, really into the spiritual side or the metaphysical side of, certain things. So I'm going to quickly give this disclaimer. I'm going to talk about the Japanese beetle from a physical standpoint, but I'm also going to talk about it from a non-physical standpoint, because I put up a video that's basically me taking out the Japanese beetles by hand out of certain plants and certain techniques I use to get rid of the Japanese beetles from my garden. So, they were pretty much telling me that's a low vibrational action and whatnot. I mean, going back to a religious mindset in actuality, where if you really want to look at the overview of what I'm even doing out here as far as gardening in and of itself is chaos magic. You know what I'm saying? You do magic every day. You do spells every single day, that you operate in your day with your time, which I'll make another video on time, because I like when people take in direct jabs, talking about that. I speak about time being an illusion and how I explained it, but I'll further go into it and why I even say it's an illusion. You know what I'm saying? But as far as the Japanese beetles go, all right, Japanese beetles, okay, and I digress. Going back to why I say this is all chaos magic. I mean, if you look at it, there's beneficial insects in your yard. There's unbeneficial insects in your yard. If you want to go into a magical standpoint of looking at it, there's beneficial fairies. There's malevolent fairies that you can look up. There's malevolent gnomes and elves. And then there's beneficial gnomes and elves, or benevolent gnomes and elves. You know what I'm saying? So, everything has its, black and white to it. So if you really want to look at it, for example, we have certain beneficial insects in the yard, such as praying mantises, that I actually cared for over winter, and I let them loose in the yard, and they're doing a really good job of getting rid of the beetles. But if you look at praying mantises, they originate from cockroaches. You know what I'm saying? Now, I try to go back and study about the Japanese beetle. The Japanese beetle is from a subfamily of different species of beetles. You know what I'm saying? So I go back and I can research the June bug. I can research a number of different bugs, such as the dung beetle, the rhinoceros beetle, all different types of beetles. And I get information telling me they go back 100 million, 150, 250 million years back. Yet I try to find information on the Japanese beetle, and I can only go back to the late 1800s or maybe the early 1900s, when it was introduced into the United States. You know what I'm saying? So, if you really want my opinion, man, I'm trying to do as much research as possible on trying to find out the origins or the original subfamily of this beetle. And I got the original subfamily. However, it's not known when it was discovered. So unless I go into like some type of Japanese website, I can find out more about it, because I like to get to the real root of the actual topic, but I can't find anything. You know what I'm saying? So to me, they were actually created or genetically modified, all in the interest of a profit. Now, I'm going to explain why I believe this, okay? Now, if you look, for example, all these other beetles, okay, they are pretty much, they can be, let's say, the category of vegans, all right? They'll eat plants, but they're not as invasive or destructive as the Japanese beetle in and of itself, all right? Now, you can look at the beneficial bugs, all right, such as praying mantises, okay? They eat everything. They eat anything and everything. They'll even kill a bee. And bees are what you need in your garden if they're not kept under control, right? But there's so many of the unbeneficial ones that's not even a problem. So it kind of outweighs and takes out the having to worry about it from that aspect. You know what I'm saying? So now we look at the Japanese beetle. If you have a garden, for example, and you look at the amount of Japanese beetles that emerge from the soil and that actually get and cluster on top of your plants, and at the rate they do the damage, if you leave Japanese beetles alone wreaking havoc for 1 week, they will pretty much destroy your garden in 1 week. They will skeletonize and do away with a garden in literally 1 week. All right. And the crazy thing is, the Japanese beetles aren't selective. They like a wide variety of different plants. You know what I'm saying? And pretty much everything that I have here in my garden, they like. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like I have to worry about one plant. I literally have to worry about the whole garden. If you have an infestation of roaches in your house, people put traps up. So they say, okay, if I put up a trap, then, you know what I'm saying, I'm not killing the bug because the bug fell to the trap that I laid. But the intention was that you put the trap for the bug to die. You know what I'm saying? However, you don't always catch all of them. You know what I'm saying? There's different methods. I'm going to start from the ground part of things and how if you could look at it from your body standpoint and how your body operates. Let's look at it like this, okay? If you have stress or certain situations in life that consciously you can manage and handle yourself, okay? If you handle them accordingly, where it would be beneficial for you to handle them, controlling your emotions, which I'm going to make a separate video on emotions as well, then depending on how you do that, you either release good chemicals in your body or negative chemicals in your body. If you handle your situations and your stresses in life in a negative way, then you are creating the unbeneficial chemicals in your body, such as cortisol and all these crazy poisonous chemicals in your body that actually keep you in a diseased state, okay? And it keeps the wheel moving, because when you keep negative thought patterns in your mind, that's the vibration and the wave that you're riding in. So you have to be consciously aware of what vibration and wave you're riding, right? So I'm out here and I'm doing chaos magic. Now, I'm also putting a lot of time into my garden. I actually feel like I live like a millionaire for that reason, because I'm not working a 9-to-5, and I don't have a problem with people who work 9-to-5s, but I have the benefit, all right, of being out here with more time on my hands to actually walk around the garden. And the most effective method that I found to get rid of these Japanese beetles is literally walking around with a cup of soapy water and watch my previous video so you can see how I do it, and just basically shaking them in that cup. I don't know any chemicals or sprays that can be more efficient than that without you having to chemically have to put something in your yard. Now, I also know that there's methods that people use to put certain nematodes and bacteria into the soil to control the grub stage. Now, I don't really particularly agree with that at all. And the reason why is because it doesn't matter what you do to your grass. You get what I'm saying? They're coming from the woods anyway. So if you have beautiful plants here with some good food on it, and the Japanese beetles like it, they're gonna come from the woods and come into your garden anyway. You know what I'm saying? So it don't matter. Why would I put anything in my grass when in actuality, see, there's certain people who don't know. Do you know the ground you walk on? See, this is the thing. When we talk about time, I'm going to get a little peek of what I'm going to be talking about when it comes to time. But most of your time, for example, would probably be in a 9-to-5. And then you come home, and to unwind, you either want to connect to electronics, or you have to entertain your family or whatnot. So now, what time do you have for yourself, or what time do you have to get to know what you actually walk on? Because this ground you walk on, this soil, is actually you. But everything that's out here is you. Everything is an illusion. But you can either get to know the organic illusion of things, or the inorganic illusion way of looking at things. Everything is a mirror. But if you really want to get to the root of what you actually are, you have to know the soil you walk on, the type of bacteria that's in your soil, the type of plants that you're planting in your soil, okay? And companion planting, the type of insects that you know might come based on the plants that you put in there. Certain plants that maybe deter certain pests. You know what I'm saying? It's no different than you knowing how to combination eat. You don't just eat anything. You have to know what you combine your foods, what kind of food you're going to eat with what, because if not, you're going to get indigestion. You get what I'm saying? Or what type of foods, if you ate something that takes a long time to process, are you going to eat more of that the next day if you did not fully finish processing that download like a computer? You see, man was created in the image of God. And God is all this that you see out here, whether it's organic or inorganic. Even the 9-to-5 is God. And even the gardening aspect and organic way of doing things is God. You get what I'm saying? So if everything is God, what are you getting to know? Okay? You see, the 9-to-5 will show you messages. But then we talk about reincarnation. We talk about a number of different things. But incarnate, okay? You're in this carnation of yours, okay? You reincarnate here because, see, there's a lot of people who try to take care of other people. They become conscious. They want to shed light on things. They want to become light workers. You get what I'm saying? But then they don't know anything about their own self. And I'm not just talking about it from a shadow aspect of yourself, like the spiritual way of looking at it, but I'm talking about the actual, like, real shadow of yourself. You see, this is chaos magic in and of itself. Okay? So if I get to know, for example, and I know that there's a way to control these nematodes in the soil, there's also fire ants that can kill the grubs of these beetles. There's other insects. There's other animals such as raccoons, moles. You know, these things will actually dig up these grubs out of the ground. But then there's also that aesthetic topic of it, where people are like, oh, but they're gonna mess up my soil, they're gonna make holes all over and start to, you know, mess up the turf. See, this is the thing though, when you're starting to worry about the aesthetic look of things, is there anything like that in the woods? When you go in the woods, you go into nature and you're like, wow, nature's so beautiful, the woods look so beautiful. I mean, there's moles and raccoons digging up in the soil all the time, but yet it looks beautiful. But then if they do it in your garden, it doesn't look good because you're used to having green grass all the way across. Okay, so when you do it like this, I'm going to show you a little something here. But if you do it like this, for example, see, I happen to have a friend who works in a tree company. I have wood chips pretty much everywhere, and I'm going to do a walkthrough of the garden. Okay, and I'm going to continue to spread wood chips. Okay, all in the interest of mimicking nature as much as possible and making it as much of a forest as I could. Okay, but aside from all that, the soil, all right, do you know about the soil? The soil, you come from the soil. Do you know the bacteria in the soil? Do you know the nematodes in the soil? Do you know why they're there? Because there's beneficial ones and then there's non-beneficial ones. But doing these things such as like adding nematodes and pathogens to the soil is no different than somebody just taking a probiotic. Is probiotic literally always beneficial for you? The more probiotics you take, you become dependent on it. And then when you stop taking the probiotics, now you have digestion issues. You know what I'm saying? So when I see, for example, white flies in my plants, I just leave them there. And then you know what? In a few days, to no surprise, I see a swarm of ladybugs. And they're like little vacuum cleaners, cleaning up all these white flies and all these, you know, things that are sucking the sap of the plant. So sometimes you just gotta let nature be. But then when it becomes an uncontrollable situation, such as like Japanese beetles, where the natural predators that you can only find are certain birds that are only native to Japan, I mean, what do? You get what I'm saying? So when something becomes, if you're doing chaos magic and it becomes chaotic, consciously, I'm gonna go outside, and instead of having to spray my garden, because this is the reason why I say that it's in the interest of a profit. That's why these Japanese beetles were created. Because if you look at these Japanese beetles, and if you grow a garden and you see at the rate that they reproduce and at the rate they'll do damaging, I don't see any chemicals or sprays that you can put in your garden that's going to control these Japanese beetles as good as you just walking around, you know, throwing them in soapy water. I don't see any other method. And aside from that, if I'm going to put nematodes and certain bacteria in my soil, okay, then I'm also not allowing the natural flow of nature, such as certain animals just digging it up, or, you know, certain ants that can see, because you look at antibiotics and then you look at antimicrobials, okay, and I see the word ants in there. Ants are very beneficial. Ants, if I see a mound of ants, see, there's a lot of people who get all bent out of shape. Oh my God, these fire ants, they're just killing me every time I walk. Why are you, just walk around them? You know what I'm saying? They clearly show themselves. I mean, they have a big, nice, you know, orange mound, and I don't see any problem with it. Unless you disturb the mound of a fire ant, then that's when they start going all over the place and attacking you. You know what I'm saying? Other than that, they don't bother me. They're actually doing what they're supposed to do there. They're not messing up my plants. On the contrary, they're controlling the grub population underground of certain unbeneficial bugs or beetles that can potentially grow from the larva state. Okay, so if you really want to know my opinion on Japanese beetles, I mean, these Japanese beetles were most likely created in a laboratory. I don't know any history behind them, and if they were created by a laboratory in the interest of profit, is for this reason, because a lot of people or gardeners don't know how to manage it. And if they do know how to manage it and they're aware of the fact that they can just walk around their garden with a cup of soap, here's the problem though. If you're working a 9 to 5, most of the time the 9 to 5, they come out in middle of the day. Between the 11 to 2 p.m. state is when they're the most active. That's because the sun is the hottest. The middle of the day is when they want to swarm the most. And then what happens is that they'll just decimate your garden. By the time you come back home at 5 o'clock, it's already a wrap. So what are you forced to do in order for you to save your garden? If you have one, you would have to spray the garden to try to control at least the reproduction stage, the reproductive state of it. You know what I'm saying? So other than that, what else can you do? Depend on beneficial bugs or birds to get rid of these beetles? It's not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't even happen in the woods or in the forest. This is not enough. You know what I'm saying? The praying mantises do a very good job, but they're just overpopulated. And by the time they pretty much do anything like that, you would have to have enough praying mantises in your yard to be able to control them. But then if you have that many praying mantises, you're also gonna have an imbalance. You're gonna have a problem where they're gonna kill all your beneficial insects such as bees and whatnot, because they eat anything, even birds. Praying mantises will kill hummingbirds and eat hummingbirds and all that. So what do? You are pretty much God in your garden, okay? Because this is a little universe of a world you created with a perfect ecosystem, right? But when there's an imbalance that was released into nature, because it's gonna force you to have to go to Lowe's, Walmart, or any nursery to go buy insecticides, you know what I'm saying, that are actually formulated and funded by the pharmaceutical industry. No different. And the thing is that if you look at pyrethrin or these type of insecticides that they say has little toxicity to humans and animals, you know, if you look at like deep researches on certain organic insecticides and whatnot, they say they have little toxicity to humans, but it outweighs what the potential damage that these unbeneficial insects could do to your yard. So at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying, you're still ingesting some type of toxicity in you. All right, all in the interest of a profit. Because if you sell your fruit, that's one thing. If you're going to eat your fruit, then even though you're just still going to eat your fruit, all right, you still want to make sure that you have food to eat. Why did you start a garden to begin with if you're going to just let the Japanese beetles wreak havoc? So if we go by a low vibrational or higher vibrational way of doing things, okay, yeah, I'm walking around my garden, but my intent, okay, is very important. You see, there's people who would say you're intentionally killing a bug and that's a low vibrational action, right? See, but I also make another intent behind why I'm even doing it. You know what I'm saying? So my intent behind doing it is actually that what does the Japanese beetle represent to me? To me, the Japanese beetle represents a genetically modified insect that was created in the laboratory by the government, which I'm going to go into a very deep topic about the government, because the government is basically you, and all this out here is basically you. But the Japanese beetle, in actuality, okay, when I am throwing it in the soapy cup, they represent my lack, my weakness, my ignorance, my just basically my hindrances. That's what the Japanese beetles represent. And every time I'm throwing it in the soapy cup, that's what's leaving my life. You know what I'm saying? And I do this if I have to intentionally kill a bug. Now, if I have an insect or a beetle in my house, I don't kill that beetle. I actually take that beetle and throw it outside. But if it's an infestation in my garden, oh yeah, I have to destroy them. You know what I'm saying? Just like, you know, everything out here is an illusion. It's an idea, right? So what idea does that Japanese beetle represent to me? That idea is what that Japanese beetle represents to me. You know what I'm saying? You're constantly killing ideas and, you know, certain emotions when they manifest into your reality, right? But they started from a thought that you created, right? So let's say, for example, all right, these little Japanese beetles, they start in the grub state in the soil. That's kind of like the idea of them, right? They're in the metaphysical state because I don't even see them. They become physical when they're already in the garden and I can actually see them, right? So let's say, for example, my idea would be for me to physically kill something that I don't even see yet, okay? But they're not in my reality yet. So I let nature do what it has to do. The fire ants, let the animals, the animals that eat those grubs, let them do what they have to do. Chickens, birds, whatever it is, they'll eat those grubs, right? But there's so many, because you see, one Japanese beetle can lay up to 60 to 80 eggs, to my understanding from what I last read. One Japanese beetle. And if you see the amount of Japanese beetles that are around, how many beetles do you think are going to multiply? Why do you think they've multiplied so much through time and spread so much through different areas of the country? You know what I'm saying? It's for that reason, because of the rate they multiply in. If you have a cockroach infestation in your house, that's a problem. You know what I'm saying? So what do? You set up traps. You have to fumigate and you know, release chemicals in your house to get rid of them, right? But what got them there to begin with? You know what I'm saying? Was it a dirty environment, dirty mentality? Was it the perfect environment for them to breed and be there? You know what I'm saying? Because I also noticed one more thing, that this may sound woo-woo to a few people, but the more toxic and stupid my mentality goes toward my actual environment, the more they actually tend to manifest in my reality. But the more I can control my emotions toward it, the more control I see that I have toward them in actuality, because it's all starting from me anyway. You know what I'm saying? So I don't agree with putting anything in your soil, because they're going to come anyway. I don't agree with setting up traps, because you're only attracting more beetles into your yard, and they don't catch all of them. They'll catch maybe about, what, 60% of the beetles. Where are the rest of the 40 going? The ones that would have never got to your yard if you didn't have that trap there. You get what I'm saying? So now these females release a pheromone that'll attract more of the males into your yard, and then that becomes another problem. Do you have time to be out there? What do you do with your time? You get what I'm saying? What does your time represent to you? Okay, because at the end of the day, I've also noticed that a communication with your garden is extremely beneficial if you really want to know what even reincarnation means. Because the more I get to understand this garden and the ecosystem here, I'm getting to know more and more about the systems in my body and how everything is basically a profit, including doctors, the pharmaceutical industries. All this is a profit. Because if you really want to look at it, there's a allopathic way of doing things, and then there's the holistic way of doing things. Okay, if I have a car and I have a problem with my car and I have a check engine light, okay, and I go to the mechanic and I say, hey, I have a check engine light on. This is how doctors manage it. It's no different than them just cutting the check engine light, be like, here, you came for a check engine light problem, check engine light gone. No, but the real way of doing it is actually putting the car on a scanner, figuring out why the car has a check engine light, and addressing the problem from the get-go, which is how I'm trying to address this situation, but I can't find none, right? How do you handle the human body? All right. See, they say the eyes are the windows to the soul, the windows to the universe, and you can map out your entire body by iridology, reading your eyes, right? It's the perfect scan tool, and it happens in real time. But this is not something that's too popular. You know what I'm saying? And this is the ultimate way of figuring out where your weaknesses, hindrances, genetic weaknesses, and all that is by reading and mapping the eyes. And then you can address the issue from the get-go. Changing your diet would be the proper thing to do. So what would you do if you have a problem of infestation of Japanese beetles? You know what I'm saying? If you have a problem with your body, what do? You consciously change your diet, right? And you get rid of candida, because people start talking about certain bacteria such as H. pylori and whatnot. But if you get rid of candida, H. pylori doesn't have the perfect environment in there to exist. So if you have a problem in your garden, right, you change the way you do things. You add organic matter on top, okay? You let nature run its course, such as raccoons, moles and whatnot. Let them do what they need to do. You know what I'm saying? They're not eating my food. Because I grow more fruit trees. I grow more fruits that are up in the air than greens. You get what I'm saying? So prioritize how you need to prioritize. Now, there's probably more I want to talk about. So I might make a part 2. But I'm also going to be talking about other things, which is going to be emotions. I'm going to be talking about the topic of time in detail. So stay tuned for that. And if you have any questions on this Japanese beetle thing, I mean, like I said, everything is... There's also something called the biology of belief. See, when you look at, for example, the placebo-nocebo effect, this is a real thing. People were given sugar pills and they thought they healed because they were convinced that this was the latest medicine and technology, and they put their full faith on the doctor, right? So here's the thing, though. Where do you put all your faith? Because there's something called the biology of belief. So if you have people believe that killing a Japanese beetle is going to be something that hinders you, then it could be. We'll talk soon.